The last thing that we need to do inside of our component is make sure that we get our text to show up as red and the outline of our input to show up as red as well. Now, just to get these things to show up as red, we'll be making use of a little bit of built-in CSS that is included with Bootstrap inside of our starter project. So effectively, to get these things to turn up as red, all we have to do is get the appropriate class names on the fields that are generating the input and the text. So effectively, back inside of our code editor, I'm going to find the render field function. I'm going to find the wrapping div that has a class name of form group. So if we just apply a class name of has danger to this thing, we should get the correct styling that we're looking for. So let's take a look. If I just hard code it on here and we say it's always going to show a has danger, and then I flip back over to the browser, cool, we get the outline to appear as red, and then to get the text to appear as red, we can add in a div around the error message down here. So I'm going to put on a little div, and I'm going to give it the class name of text-help. Text-help is going to work along with the has danger rule right above it to make sure that this text appears as red. So now if we flip back over and refresh and then touch each one, yeah, there we go. So now these things are hard-coded as always being red. So it's okay if we leave the text here as red 100% of the time, because if there is no error, this text isn't valid, or excuse me, the text is not visible at all. So really what we need to do is make sure that we only show the input as red, or we only apply that class name of has danger when the field is not valid. And so I want to expand on that last point just a little bit. When exactly do we want to apply the class name of has danger? In the past, we were saying, okay, well, if the user has touched it, then we will show an error message. But this time around, we really only want to apply this class name right here if the user has both touched the field and there is an error present. So I think that we can probably use a ternary expression again for generating this class name right here, but this time the ternary expression is going to look just a little bit different because we want to make sure that the user has both touched it and an error message exists. Okay, so with that preamble out of the way, rather than putting the entire class name directly in here inside the div in the JSX, I think that'd be really nice just for code organization if we generated the class name right above it. So let's say class name, and we're going to use a template string here again. So I'll use my backticks. We'll say that it always needs to be a form group, and then we'll use our string template right here. So make sure you get the $sign and the curly brace, and then inside of there, we'll place our ternary expression. So if field.meta.touched and field.meta.error, then we'll use a class name of has danger. Otherwise, empty string for this expression right here. So this is a rather long little segment right here. We could probably clean it up by using just a little bit of destructuring. Let's do that just to make everything appear a little bit nicer. So right above, we'll just destructure off the meta property so we can drop field from right here, right here, right here, and right here. So we'll grab meta from field, and now we can clean up the first field, the second field, number 3, and number 4 as well. Now we could also destructure the touched and error properties off of the meta object as well. So we can use destructuring not only to pull off the first value or the first property off of an object, but we can also use destructuring to access nested properties as well. And so I think this would probably be a good place to use that. So let's go one step further, and we're going to say off of the meta object that we are destructuring off a field, I also want to destructure touched and error, like so. So if you look at this syntax right here, this is a little bit of a side into ES6, by the way, which we're talking about right now. This might look like it would be expanded to be a object like touched, right? Because we've used this syntax several times throughout this course. We've said, oh yeah, if the key and the value are the same, you can just condense it down to be like so. In this case, when we're using this compacted syntax with destructuring, This does not get expanded into an object. It is just used for destructuring to pull off the properties touched and air from the meta object. So again, this is how we use destructuring to access properties on nested objects. So with that refactor, now we can go to being just touched and air. And then inside of the div down here, we can be just touched and air, like so. Okay, I think that looks much better with that little bit of ES6 refactor. The last thing we have to do is make sure that we apply this class name to our div. So I will replace the hard-coded class name with the class name variable, like so. Okay, I think that we're ready for a test. Let's flip back over to the browser. So when everything first renders, I expect to see absolutely no error messages. Yep, that looks good. Now if I select or focus an input, and then I put in no text and focus another one, the entire thing turns red. Okay, that looks good. But if I go back into that input and enter in some text, everything goes back to saying, okay, that looks like valid input. You'll also notice that now that the user has kind of messed around with this input a little bit, like they've put some text in here, now they will instantaneously get input or feedback the instant they start changing this thing around. So in practice, form renders pristine, everybody's happy, but as soon as you start messing around with it, okay, we're going to start being pretty aggressive and showing you some validation messages. All right, so I think that's about it for our form. Everything's looking pretty darn good so far. I think the last thing that we have to do inside of this is make sure that whenever we click this submit button back here, or down here at the bottom, we actually submit this to our backend API. We also need to make sure that we show a cancel button on here that a user can click to go back to our list of posts. So let's take care of both of those challenges in the next section.